Welcome to Business Technicalities. In this video, we're going to delve into the origins of Hostifi and guide you through their journey from zero to the present status here in February 2024, where they manage over 442,000 UniFi devices and generate more than $3 million a year in annual revenue. We'll explore the advantages and challenges of maintaining transparency by publicly sharing all your revenue figures and statistics on your website. Additionally, we'll discuss the critical role community engagement in fostering brand growth, the pivotal moment of stepping away from your own code, the strategic addition of consulting services, and the significant opportunities missed by their competitors that are trying to build, well, the same services Reilly is building here. But let's dive in and talk about all those details. How you doing, Reilly?
Hey, good. Good to see you again, Tom.
Good. It's been a minute, and you had posted a mile marker, I think, about just how much you had pulled through in Stripe. I think that's kind of what made me
Yeah,
go,
yeah.
boy, he's doing quite a bit here, and you're really transparent
Thanks.
about it. So I figured let's talk about the success you see now versus where you started, because it's an overnight success. You started this a year ago, right?
Yeah, 10 years ago, but yeah, close.
Okay. Yeah,
Feels like
I
a
think
year
that's always
ago.
the fun thing, and I want to bring to the audience here is you see people, you notice them when they're successful, but that doesn't mean you know the journey that took them there. And sometimes you get discouraged yourself starting out going, "Oh, Riley's doing really well with this, with everything." But that's why we're like behind the scenes, like you said, it wasn't a year ago; it was 10 years ago that you
Yeah.
launched this. And we'll touch briefly on this. You had a couple other ventures that just didn't like. You tried a few different things when you had first went left corporate and started. So let's talk briefly about that.
My very first business wasn't just an IT services business, and I wanted to be like an MSP. And so I did like a lot of different projects like you would expect. And then after a while, I started wanting to do more software projects. So some of the things I started were Hostify, Captify, Ghostify, and a community for MSPs called MSP Story. And I sold Ghostify, I shut down Captify, and I shut down MSP Story after Hostify started to get traction. But I started them all around 2018, 2019.
Yeah, they're just like, and I think that's a lot of times what all of us do as entrepreneurs is kind of we start a couple different things. Your mind's going, what can I make money at? This is fun. It's scary,
Yeah.
because you still got bills to pay. They don't stop just because you don't have a corporate job anymore. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's in it. So you whittle it all down. It came up in my Facebook memories that I actually started a company called LTS Creative, and I shut that
You forgot all about
down.
it.
I,
Yeah.
it was if it wasn't for a Facebook memory, I'm like, oh yeah, I did that. That didn't work.
Yeah. Yeah.
I sunk some money into that. That went poorly.
Yeah.
So when you narrowed it down, what inspired you to go for the SaaS focusing on hosted UniFi? I know you've seen them UniFi getting popular, and you said this is the one that's got traction. It's going to take off. What focused you on that?
Yeah. It was just something I was interested in. And really, I didn't think it would be like a big business. I just was like, this is something that something that is easy that I could start in 30 days. And I really wanted to just start something and get a couple of different ideas out there. And that's why I started those other things too, because I didn't know, it wasn't clear early on that Hostify could become $1 million business. So yeah, I think what originally how I got the idea was I was working as an IT service provider. So I had my own services business called Lachlan Networks, and I would do all kinds of odd jobs from cabling to phone systems, make a website for somebody, write a little Python program. So I was kind of freelancing and doing little jobs like that. And one of the things I did was UniFi. So whenever someone needed like wireless or network, I would use the Ubiquity equipment. And I remember like the very first time I even found out about UniFi was like, I think it was in like 2015. And I had gone out to a customer site because it got hit by lightning and it fried their 2 nano stations and their UniFi AP. And I was staring at it. I was like, how the heck does this thing work? Where is the web interface? I kept trying to find the web interface. How am I going to configure Wi-Fi and get this thing working? And then I spent all day oh, okay, you got to install a controller on your computer and then you got to connect the device to the controller. And then I was like, oh, wait, this is actually really cool. And so I went home, I spun up a Linux server on DigitalOcean. I figured out how to do that. There wasn't really any guides back then or anything. So it was like kind of tricky to figure out, how do I get an SSL certificate installed? Oh, I have to like do Let's Encrypt, but then I have to like export it to a certain format and import it into UniFi's Java key store. So there's like all these steps. And I was like, yeah, maybe it would be a good idea if I just automated this process for someone. So when they click, buy a server, it just like automatically sets up Linux, runs all the commands, sets up the SSL and cert, and then we can like continuously add like security and backups and updates and make it like as a service. So I kind of got the idea from my own experience. I was already running my own controller, adding more and more customers to it for my services business. And then I had a couple of other servers I was running for other people. Like I had another guy who was a friend of mine who also had an IT service business that I would subcontract with, and he wanted me to run his server for him. So before he knew it, I was already running like 5 of these things anyways. So I might as well just make a service, and if nobody uses it, I'll at least use it, and I can write a script to push updates to the 5 of us. And that's kind of how it got started.
Yeah, it was really interesting because you were very public facing. This is how I ran into you, talking about it in
Yeah.
different groups. You did a lot of engagement with the community, which I think was important for any of them. Because if you just try and throw a SaaS out there, like, cool, I got the coolest product ever, but how do you even get any discovery unless you have some engagement with the community around it? And I think that's, I had noted a question about securing first customers, but really I already know the answer. So speak, especially with the audience, it was your engagement with the community, I think was really key.
Yeah, that's what it was, because I was an IT service provider, so I figured maybe more people like me would want this, and it just so happens that like IT service providers are a big segment of the people that use UniFi, and so I was able to make those relationships. I already had a lot of relationships with other IT service providers from having my own business and working with other people, and then getting more involved in the community, like Facebook groups and stuff like that.
Yeah,
So that's kind of how I got started.
I think it's interesting too, because I think the best companies are people who started, who understood the problem, and they did it to scratch the itch to solve the problem, versus when someone has a big stack of cash going, how do I make more of
Yeah,
this money? What are the things people might need? And then they try to reverse
yeah,
engineer what people need versus what they need because you worked the job. You understood the need of what other IT people like myself would need in terms of, hey, I need a hosted controller system. I need this to be automated. Why is the certificate process so stupid?
yeah.
So
That's
I think
exactly right.
yeah, and I think that's what helped get you pretty quickly. You became kind of the go-to reference. I remember you being tagged a lot in different Facebook groups related to anytime there was a question, and which also me and you were both being tagged. Me for the network engineering side,
Yeah.
you for like, how do I host this controller? I'm like, just have Reilly host it. That was my answer all the time, and it's kind of how me and you got connected.
Thanks. Yeah, that was a huge help. I think it was really early on that you reached out to me and did a video, and that was yeah, really helpful for us, because we were just getting started, and I had just gone full time on it when you brought that video out, and then we got a lot of customers from that. And I think rewinding a little bit before that, we had like a free plan, and that was kind of cool at the time. We don't do it anymore because it was a lot to support that many people, but we had like over 1,000 people that signed up, and we were hosting, just putting them on a shared server. So that was pretty cool, for like initial traction, finding customers.
Yeah, and I think me and you talked about it. You developed it really quickly. I was like, a reference program. Why not set this up? And I think I was probably your first customer
Yes, you
zero
were
with
our
our
first
affiliates.
affiliate. Yeah. So you were like, hey, I'm planning on doing this video. If you have an affiliate link, cool. If not, I'm just going to post it anyways. And I was like, of course we have an affiliate program. I ran out and like found software to integrate with our software and like wrote it all up that night and got back to you the next day with an affiliate link. So that was cool.
Yeah, yeah, it was fun because me and you talked back and forth about it. I'm very transparent myself, just like you are, about how all of it works, and it's
Yeah.
labeled in my videos as an affiliate link. I'm not hiding it.
Yeah.
And let's jump a little bit over though. One of the reasons I recommend you is people like, oh, it's just because he's your friend or just because you affiliate. It's like actually not that. Right now is a good time to probably mention like I've watched other people and try to do what you do, but they always focus on what I think is absolutely the wrong thing. They go, "How can I just do it cheaper than Reilly?" And that is like this mentality people have, like, "Oh, I'm going to quit working for the person I work for. I'm just going to cut all my prices to half." And what they end
Mm.
up with is, as the joke may go, the Wish or Timu version of what you tried to do. And you're like,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
secret to beating you would be to make a better service, not a cheaper. It's not price. People at
Yeah.
some point, it's not. You don't chase the pennies. If honestly, here's a secret to beating me or you: be better than us.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. And all the ones that have come after me, they always want to be Hostify but cheaper. And I just wish somebody would come along and try to be Hostify but better, because then we could actually have something to compete with, or like try and innovate, come up with new ideas, new features. But if you try to just copy someone and be the same thing but cheaper, sometimes that works out.
It's not the best way to do it. There's always
It's not the
someone
best
who's
way to do
looking.
it. There's better
Yeah,
ways to differentiate than that.
exactly. There's way better ways to do it because it's sometimes when you do it so cheap, it's not scalable. And
Mhm.
one of the things about that scalability and reliability, one of the things that you just don't have is people complaining about, well, Hostify's down again. And how are some of your approaches to both security and reliability? Because it's not because I'm not saying this to be nice. I'm saying this because you literally, I don't feel bad recommending you because you don't have a bunch of downtime. So how'd you
Well,
do that?
yeah, I appreciate that, and we've thought through it a lot. And as we've built new things, we always avoid single point of failure. So today is another good example of another time that Ubiquity's website went down. It was unifi.ui.com. Everyone goes there to connect to their other devices um, over their proxy, but I don't know what they're doing there with redundancy, but that thing goes down all the time, and that's that's not acceptable for businesses.
Yeah.
Um, so what we've done is we've created a distributed model so that there's no like portal that you log into. There's app.hostify.com, but you can still connect to your server directly. And we have over 3,000 separate VPS servers with Vulture. So there's no way to like that we could make a mistake or something could go down and all 3,000. We've never had all 3,000 servers go down. I think the only time we had a major outage was a couple of years ago when Cloudflare had that little BGP mix up that took down like 40% of the internet, but we can't really do anything about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
So
that's and I believe the problem Ubiquity's facing is the fact that they're so dependent on AWS. And
yeah.
I've seen that wonderful cartoon meme where everything's falling apart because AWS East went down and then like the internet went dark partially. Cloudflare is
Yes,
the same
such a big
answer at
data
some
center.
point. But you have to really look at the reliability. And me and you had some technical conversations, and maybe we'll do a separate technical video on this. But one of the things I've always appreciated from the beginning, some of the early inception, is we talked about scalability. You were like, "Hey, Tom, what do you think
Mhm.
of this tool?" And I see you out there on Twitter posting things like that. You were engaging with developers in the community, going, I'm only this tiny little company. How do I plan to
Yeah.
be bigger? I have the vision. How do I build this scalable? Because if you don't do that now, it won't work later.
Mhm.
Or you'll end up with a bunch of technical debt. That means you can't do it. I see a lot of companies facing that challenge where they got big and they're like, we don't really, we're standing on a lot of technical debt that was never made to be scalable. So refactoring all the the foundation of our code would be hard, and we're not ready to do hard right now. So
Yes.
you
It's very
avoided some of
challenging.
that. I do know a couple times you may have gone down the wrong path. Any insights you want to
Well,
offer on that?
yeah, definitely. So like, and I don't think it was the wrong path. I think it was just like, you try things and they don't work and you get better. And that's kind of the right path, is just like, getting there little increments at a time. But definitely one major challenge we had was I originally wrote all the code hastily and with Python scripts and Word, and I used WordPress as our website. And then I wrote Python scripts to build the servers and manage the servers. And then I had like plugins for WordPress that handled the payments to Stripe and the subscriptions and stuff. And that was definitely not scalable, but we did get it to like $1 million a year in revenue. So I guess it was scalable, to an extent, but it was a little crazy. And we had to rewrite the entire software base when I hired a Laravel developer because it had exceeded, far beyond my capabilities as a programmer. I am just, I know how to write scripts and things, but I'm not like a super good programmer. So I was able to hire really talented programmers in PHP and Python, and they rewrote the entire thing. We have a full-time infrastructure guy who he writes Python code, and I think some of the work that he's doing is actually really innovative, not just for our small business, but like to the way that we're managing SSL certificates. We have 3,000 SSL certificates that renew every 3 months using Let's Encrypt, and in the past, that was one thing that was a real challenge for us. Because if something goes wrong in that renewal process, the SSL won't work if it doesn't get re-imported into Java's key store correctly and all this stuff. So we actually built this entire proxy system that is controlled by an API, and we make an API call to add a domain to it. And it goes and it updates the proxy configuration on each server. So I mean, there's a lot of really cool stuff that we're doing. I wish we should actually have my guy Andrew on the call for if we do a technical deep dive on
Yeah,
it. It's really
absolutely.
interesting because he's using images also to now we have consistency across all 3,000 servers, that if we update one, there we know that they're all made the same. Because in the beginning, things would get kind of out of sync where, oh, this one customer wants this one configuration to be different, so we'll just do it on this one server. But if you do that too many times, you have a few hundred customers that have slightly different configurations, and then you push an update and then it breaks some customers. So it's very important that you keep all the configurations in sync, or at least be aware of, differences between them. And so he's built an entire system just for us. We didn't use Ansible because we needed even more customization than that was able to offer.
Wow.
So we have like our own like image based system and APIs and servers that manage SSL certificates. It's pretty elaborate, and um, you wouldn't really think that, it would be that complicated, but it is, managing this
Well,
many servers.
in reading between the lines here, one of the things I want to point out, if people didn't catch this, was you knew when to throw away some of the code you wrote. Because I've seen people really get stuck. Like, I wrote this; it's my baby, and I can't let this go. And it leads into that technical debt that makes it harder for you to do this later. You wouldn't have been able to scale WordPress to the point where you're at now if you said, "No,
Yeah, it's tough.
I'm not giving up all this code and hours I have into WordPress." That's yeah,
Yeah.
it's knowing when to drop it. I have some friends, Finn Security, and the founder, he's completely had to let go. He goes, "It doesn't look like my code anymore," and that's a good thing. And he says, because that's how the company grew.
Yes. Yeah, that's what happened to me too. It was scary the moment when I realized that I could no longer commit to the repos because I didn't understand everything that was going on. But yeah, you do have to let go at some point. I think that's true across other areas of the business too, where it's like it's hard to give up that control where you don't even understand it anymore, and somebody else knows how it works. That's
I know.
tough.
I employ some people that are way smarter than me now, and it's really weird.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah, that's
I'm
the
so happy
feeling.
you can fix that.
Yeah, yeah.
So besides me in doing some affiliate links, what are some other marketing strategies that you found, or is it just really once you reach critical mass, there was a lot of word of mouth, if you will, through
So
goodwill and that? Where's the marketing strategy been taking you now?
I think the early on marketing is what I'll focus on, because that's the most interesting part, is like getting something from 0 to 1. And I think the biggest thing for me was like a mindset shift from when I created my very first business in 2014, Lachlan Networks IT services business. I spent a lot of time doing things that didn't matter, like creating a logo. Like I spent like $2,500. I had a graphic design firm make us a logo, and I went and got polo shirts, and I got extra thick business cards, and I did all this kind of like marketing procrastination, I guess. Like I didn't actually go out and talk to customers and figure out, what they needed, or go to networking events. And, it's really about talking to people and relationships. And in the beginning, I was just like, oh, I'm going to make a WordPress website. I'll put it on the internet, and then people will start calling me. And it's like, that's not exactly how this works, actually. So I
Well,
learned
every
that.
tech person thinks it works.
Yeah, exactly. And so, especially as tech people, right? A lot of us are more introverted. We don't like going to social events. Talking to people is not like our thing. So, I learned that though, those lessons the hard way early on. And so 2018, I started Hostifi. This was 4 years after that. I had learned that, being good at your skill, whatever it is you're doing, IT services, hosting UniFi servers, that's only part of it. 80% of it, my time, I kind of made this distinguish my time, where it's like 20% of my time working on the product, making it better. And actually early on, not today, but early on, like 80% of my time, sales, marketing, talking to people, getting feedback about it. Because otherwise, it's easy to get stuck where you're just constantly updating code and no one's even using it. And you're just in there, working on it. And you got to get things out in front of people. So early on, I was directly reaching out to people, because when you first launch a website, it's not showing up in Google. Nobody's calling you, finding it. You have to go out there, and I would go to the Ubiquity community and DM people, or post on Reddit or Twitter or Facebook. And I remember posting on the Reddit, and you just getting deleted because people are like, "Oh, this is spam." And so
Yeah.
you learn, you can't just go out and spam stuff, and you can't
Yeah.
you can't
You
just be
can't.
like, "Oh, check out this new thing that's super cheap." Like nobody cares about about that. That doesn't earn trust. So
No, it doesn't. I've always appreciated you. Like I said, you've engaged a lot with the community, and more to recently, you have staff engaging with the community as well. So it's not just you now. You've made them
yeah,
also advocates for the brand.
So early on, I think what helped the most was I reached out to people directly, and I didn't get a lot of success with that, because like, who is this guy? Nobody knows me, and I'm trying to sell you something. Like that's not a good way to start a relationship. So instead of doing that, I think it was just posting more about like, hey, I'm making this business, and not like, hey, do you want to buy this? It's more just like, hey, here's my experience. Like this month, I set up this website, um, and here's my ideas on how I might be able to find customers. So it was kind of like a indirect way of marketing, just sharing my experience. And then I think when it started to work was um, we launched the free plan a couple months after I started Hostify, and it started to spread that people were sharing it and stuff. And the people that were using the free plan were like network engineers who like, or tech people that like had some UniFi stuff they were setting up at home. But then they would go to work and tell their boss about it, and then they would buy a server. So that was, I think that's kind of how it started to, the marketing efforts started to pay off early on.
Like I said, you're well known within all the same circles that I'm in for some of the same stuff, being technical and things like that. One thing that was interesting is, and I don't remember exactly when you started it, you started the consulting side as well, added that to
Yeah.
the service offering. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, so it was about a couple of years ago, we started Hostify Pro, and we started to do consulting. So the software business model is obviously like a better business model, but we really wanted to help the customers like in the full experience of things, not just the server, but like just do everything for them. Find the equipment, tell them which equipment to buy. We can configure it for you. Then we can connect it to the server. We can manage it for you from there. So that was kind of like, okay, let's do like the full solution instead of just the one piece. And that will help us expand our market, but also like help us just serve our customer better. And I think that's an important part of it is like not just picking the business model that works best for us, but really doing what's best for the customer and like the whole solution. So we launched that 2 years ago. And um, for the first year, I don't think it was even profitable, but I had like a full-time guy working on it. And it took a while to build that up, even though we already had 3,000 or like 2,000 customers and like a really great brand and everything, but it just still takes time when you start something new. And so now we've grown that to $300,000 a year in revenue, 3 full-time employees. And we just acquired another business, does similar Ubiquity services. We're going to merge that into our business, or actually merge our business into their business. And they were doing like 200,000 a year last year. So we're close to like 500,000 in revenue now on that with about 3 part-time or 3 full-time employees and 1 part-time. So it's
And I
been an
think that's
adventure.
the important investment you made, though, was the expense is all about the people. You didn't try to find someone who would work for minimum wage. We're just going to start there. You actually found good technicians because you wanted to create a good experience. This is something I think people struggle with in the services business. They're like, well, I want to get some of the services. I need to grow, but people are expensive. I'm like, it's a
Mm.
cost you have to bite. It is something you'll have to do. You'll have to hire that engineer that knows what they're doing. They're going to come at an expense. Then you, as the owner, you have to figure out, set that runway, and that is how long you have before you run out of money.
Yeah.
Get hustling, get that business in there, because if you do get the business but you can't service it, you just fall on your
Mhm.
face and you're starting over again each time. We've seen it a lot because I do a lot of consulting, so I've got a lot of insight into this. And if you just don't have the right people on the back end, it's not going to do. So I'm
Yeah.
glad you mentioned that it was not profitable at first. That is normal.
Yeah, it takes a while to get it to scale. And yeah, from the start, I hired really great people, and I've been really lucky to be able to work with these people. The first guy I hired was Evan McCann. I don't know if you've seen his blog,
Yeah,
but
great
he
Ubiquity
writes a
blog.
lot about UniFi stuff. So that's how I found him. He was already a huge Ubiquity fan. He knows about all the products, every product line. He knows how to configure stuff. Um, he moved on to another job, but I hired Jack Miller next. I don't know if you heard of him, but he also has a YouTube channel with like over 10,000 followers and makes Ubiquity videos. So I've been lucky to find these guys who are just super passionate about Ubiquity stuff. And so yeah, Jack Miller is running it now, and we have Jake and Kevin Sutar. And so I've just been finding people. Kevin, I met him in the Facebook groups. He was always replying with helpful information to people that posted on the Ubiquity Facebook group, and so I could tell that he knew what he was talking about. But yeah, it's an investment, and yeah, now we're still figuring it out because it's like a service business is difficult, and the software
Yes.
business, it's just like you come to appreciate it so much more when you run a service business, because with the software business, the customers, they pay everything up front before they even use it. Before we even have to pay our vendor, we're already paid. Before we have to pay the server bill, We don't have to worry about if they stop paying, because it just like automatically cancels their server, and then they come to us and ask, and then we sort it out with them. And the service business, you gotta learn more about the accounting side, following up on those invoices
Yeah.
that are unpaid, and in managing that volume of work where it's, the service business is like always like feast or famine. You're either like just work to death, or you got nothing to do and you're worried when the next job's going to come in.
Yep.
So it's like, there's so many different aspects to it that are,
It is interesting.
difficult.
It is kind of cool because not many people can navigate both of these and maintain them. This is a challenge because the model, like you said, is substantially different from one to the other.
Yeah, and you start to get good at one business model. So if you're good at the services business model, it might be, it might be difficult to learn the software business model. But learning both is kind of a challenge, and it's not usually recommended to go into multiple business models, because you get skill sets in one. But like I said, in this case, we had the customer base. They keep asking us to do services, so we probably should do it. So we did it, and it's been going good. So I'm
Yeah.
glad we did it.
Now, you threw numbers out here, and one of the things that I've always appreciated from day one all the way till today, you're very transparent about the number of customers, the revenue runs you have, and everything else. And you break this down. You have it publicly posted on websites. It's not like you have to go hunting for it. Do you feel that has helped or hindered you in any way?
Well, I think people take it the wrong way now that we're making a couple million a year, which by the way is like still tiny compared to a lot of businesses make a lot more
Yeah.
money than that. We're still a tiny small business. But I think people see it as boastful. But I just want to remind people that, like, I was posting about this when I made my first dollar. I was posting about, hey, this month we got to $100 a month. I was posting when we got to $1,000 a month. And there were some times that I was, I stopped posting for a while, but yeah, now we're at 3 million. And I think it's just like, we're at 3 million in annual recurring revenue, and plus a couple 100,000 on the service business. And I think it just tells you exactly where we're at, so that if you have a bigger business, maybe some of the things I'm saying don't make sense at your business size. Or if you have a smaller business, maybe you shouldn't listen to some of the stuff I'm saying because it makes sense at my business size, but not yours. And I think it just kind of adds the context to what I'm saying. If I'm giving advice, you should know what stage my business is at.
Yeah.
I think
And
that it
I think
helps.
it's a really good take on it, because that's really important that you understand. I did a talk a little bit earlier today, and they were asking about this or that, about how scaling servers and what hypervisors to use. And I said, first question is, who am I talking to? Like I said, do
Yeah.
you have customers? Before I recommend a product, do you
Context.
have customers that need this product? We have customers with like 1,000 virtual machines. Do you have those customers? If not, this product's not for you. This is not the product market
Exactly.
fit. Yeah. So it always comes with the context, but you get business maturity levels that come into play as well, for where you're at, how advanced, how many employees you
Yeah.
have, and how you're managing things. I really appreciate the transparency, and I wish more people did it. I mean, in fact, a lot of people I follow are people who did this. Daniel Messler runs the Unsupervised Learning podcast, really cool podcast,
Oh,
and
cool.
he is super transparent. He's got this whole thing breaking down how much money he makes for each market segment he's doing. And this is a podcast that pulls in over $1 million a year. So
It's fascinating. I love what
yeah,
other people share too. And that's the part of the reason why I did it, is because I was inspired by other people who were transparent with their journey, and I learned from them. And that's kind of my way of giving back, even when sometimes it's not in my best interest to share, because we do have competitors or people who are, using this information to try and copy us or do different things. So it's not always in my best interest to share all the numbers and everything that's going on, but I do it anyways, because like I said, it's kind of like, people inspired me, and I hope that I can, provide
yeah.
some value to other people too.
And this leads me to the final question I have. And this is something that is easy for me to tell when you're telling this story, because you've built credibility over being transparent. And it's, what advice can you give people getting started that don't want to get sucked into buying into the scams and scammy people pushing the get rich quick advice? Buy my book, take my course. You're going to be a SaaS billionaire in about 10 minutes after my course is over. You're going to be a genius. I see these grifters that get into any market segment. I've seen them, like, if there's a market segment, like there's people
Yeah.
overselling how to get into tech, overselling how to
Yeah.
take my course to become a coder overnight, jump into cybersecurity, take my course and you'll be making $1 million your first landing job. And I sometimes always I look for people doing the work and what levels of transparency. So you're easy, but you're not selling a book to anyone. So you're just being transparent because you're being transparent. But what are some
Yeah.
telltale signs? Because you've probably seen those people. And how do we avoid them?
Well, I think the last thing you said is one of the most important things is, why are people saying the things they're saying? And I don't have a course that I'm selling. I don't have a book that I'm selling. So if you listen to it, the stuff that I'm doing, it's not because I'm trying to sell you something. And there's a lot of people like that out there who are sharing their journey, and you should go and learn from those people and favor their opinions over the people that are selling the courses. But it's tough because it's like, education is really important.
Yeah.
But some of the best education that I've had has been either free or like less than $20. So definitely never, books are cheap, and you can do, I definitely recommend reading books about people and how they found success. And especially people that are, that, that you want to emulate, that, you like the way that they live their life, or the way they built their business.
Yeah.
Read about those people and their biographies and their blogs. But don't buy, I don't think I've ever met anyone that they bought a several $1,000 like really expensive course on how to build a business, and then they came out the other end learning things they couldn't have learned on their own, or had some,
Yeah.
you
I,
know,
I'll
path to
completely agree with
success
that.
from that.
Reading books is huge, especially when I love when entrepreneurs take the time when they've completed stuff and they write these books about how they got there, which is always really cool.
Yes, it's a
Um,
gem.
Yeah, Jay Samit. I think me and you talked about him before. He did a book called
Hmm.
Disrupt You, but it's just a collection of all the different ideas and how companies got to where they are. And Jay Samit, a
That's
pretty
cool.
successful entrepreneur, they're very good. And like each chapter is just a story. Like this is how this company did this, and this was some of their pivots into
Yeah.
this. Those things are really fun because they're actionable. They give you a thought process of how. And sometimes it's as simple. One of my favorite ones was so simple as Pennzoil. Like how'd they get to be a big company? Because Quaker was the big oil company, then Pennzoil. Well, Pennzoil had this crazy idea. They watched Coca-Cola put Coke in plastic, and they go, they used to be in these cardboard
Fascinating.
oil was in cardboard containers, and they said no one likes cardboard containers. They kind of suck, and they spill everywhere. But this Coke company, they seem to have a thing going on. They move from glass bottles to plastic. So why don't we put our oil in a
Nice.
plastic reclosable container? It's like the dumbest idea
Genius.
ever. And by the way, they're a
Right.
billion-dollar
Yeah.
company now.
Common sense. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that stories like that are great too, because there's just so many things that like, it's not an instruction book on how to, like, there's no instruction book out there
right.
on how to build a business, but you learn all these random things, and then your brain starts to kind of like map this new network of like, okay, this is how all these people did it, and they each did it differently, but like here's what they had in common. And I recently read Invent and Wander is Jeff Bezos, and it was just this is obviously not an instruction manual on how to start a business or how to start the next Amazon, but it was still like really insightful reading all of his shareholder letters and the things that he was thinking about and his long-term ambitions. And I found that was a really good book. And before that, I read the Elon Musk book, which obviously is also not an instruction manual on how to live your
Right.
life or how to start a business. But at the same time, you come away with all these kind of creative takeaways from it.
Was it the
But
older Elon Musk book? The one that came out
No,
a
the
few
one that
years.
just came out by Walter Isaacson
Okay,
came out
I
in
have not read
October.
that one. I read his older one, and there's a lot
Oh,
of
okay, cool.
yeah, I can completely disagree with Elon on many things, but I will tell you the insightfulness and the engineering side of Elon is interesting. I'm
Yeah.
not a big fan of some of the things he does besides engineering. I don't think we've learned where his limits are. Is how I would look at that.
Yeah, yeah.
Somehow, the same guy that was able to create one of the most incredible car companies out there in terms of net worth and things like that is not really good at managing people. It turns out, but hey,
Yeah,
you know,
doesn't have a great family life or other
no,
things I'd wanna emulate,
there were
but
certain things,
absolutely
some
fascinating,
insights
his
in the
attention to
book.
detail and
Mhm.
his work on the factory lines and just constantly improving things and making them more efficient and cheaper and faster. That really made me think a lot about my own business. But yeah, I think one of a couple of books that really inspired me, the Millionaire Fastlane is one book by MJ DeMarco, and that's just a book about business models, and you can get it for a couple bucks for an ebook. That's how I came up with the idea to start a software business, even though I had no background in software. And then the other book that really inspired me was the Micro SaaS ebook by Tyler Tringus, and that was just a guy who wrote a blog post about how he built a small software business on his own very quickly with no money. And so that was the blueprint really for creating Hostifi. So
And those simple little things like that, like here's
Free. That was a free that was a free one, by the way, no money. And the other
yeah.
one was like $10 ebook, and that like changed my life. So,
Yeah, I
um,
mean, if you bought all the books me and you just talked about, you're gonna spend less than $50.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, there's not a lot of expense here. Matter of fact, if you do credits, you could probably get a handful of them for free from Audible or something. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
low hanging fruit. I still to this day spend time reading a lot of those books. I redid the E Myth Revisited,
Oh, I
Nature
love
of
that book
What.
too.
That's a good one too. Nature of What
Yeah.
I Do. We actually have a giant board that we trained our staff on called the They Ask You Answer. You may have read that book. Really good book.
Mm.
It's about taking everything your customers do and then creating content all around what your customers ask. But it requires you to work with. If you do it right, you work with your staff. So the staff make all
That's
these
smart.
notes of things they heard customers say, and it
That's
bubbles its way
smart.
up to management. And that's what our blog posts and content I create on my YouTube channel are about. A lot of times it's these frequent customer questions that come up and
Yes.
frequent in your it's kind of a neat way to do it. It's a really good book. I didn't read the book till last year. I just thought that was a good idea to do things. I was doing it for years. People are like, oh, did you follow the
Yeah.
They Ask That You Answer to build your YouTube
Oh,
channel? I'm
yeah.
like, no, but that was kind of I said that is kind of what I did. Like people asked me questions and I answered them, and they're like,
Yes.
no, there's a book called that. And I'm like, there is. And I didn't. It's a good book. I'd put that on a recommended reading list if you're thinking about like ways to
That's great. I'll add that.
yeah, if it gives you good ideas of how to create blog content because it's always like staring at a blank page, going, "I want to put something useful for people, but I'm going to end up writing something useful for me, which may not get engagement." But when you take it
Mm.
from the other side of, hey, you need to ask your people who really interact with your customers when you have a bunch of staff, and like, what are the questions people ask you all the time that you would love to just point them at a blog post as a reply instead of explaining it to
Yes.
them?
That's great.
Yeah. So, well, this was awesome. We'll do a more technical one sometime in the future that we'll throw on the other channel. But thanks for
Cool.
sharing all this. This was definitely great. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It's
All right.
great.